If you are planning to retire in 2026, or you already retired in the last year or two, there is a risk hiding inside your retirement portfolio that most financial advisors don't explain clearly enough. Most retirees have never heard of, and that can permanently destroy your nest egg even if the market fully recovers. It's called sequence of returns risk. And in a year where market volatility is dominating every financial headline, understanding this concept is not optional. It is one of the most important things you can do to protect everything you have saved. Here's the frightening part. Sequence of returns risk doesn't require a permanent market crash to devastate your retirement. It only requires bad returns to happen at the wrong time, specifically in the early years of your retirement when you are actively withdrawing money. And right now, in 2026, with markets swinging wildly, interest rates still elevated, tax law changes creating uncertainty, and economic crosscurrents hitting from multiple directions, the conditions that make sequence of returns risk most dangerous are present and real. So today I am going to explain exactly what sequence of returns risk is, show you with real numbers why it's so dangerous, walk you through the strategies that protect against it, and give you a specific action plan for navigating this volatile environment as a new or near retiree. Let's start with the concept itself, because once you understand the mechanics, you will never look at market volatility the same way again. Imagine two people. Let's call them Carol and David. Both retire with exactly $1 million saved. Both earn an average annual return of 6% over their 30-year retirement, and both withdraw $40,000 per year from their portfolio. By every measure that matters on paper, same starting balance, same average return, same withdrawal amount, Carol and David should end up in exactly the same financial place after 30 years. But here is what actually happens. Carol retires into a strong market. Her portfolio grows in the early years, and even as she withdraws $40,000 annually, her balance stays healthy for decades. David retires into a down market. His portfolio drops significantly in years 1, 2, and 3, and because he is withdrawing $40,000 from a shrinking balance, he is selling more shares at depressed prices just to meet his living expenses. When the market eventually recovers, and let's say it fully recovers and then some, David doesn't fully benefit because he already sold too many shares at the bottom to fund his withdrawals. Carol and David had the same average return over 30 years, but David's portfolio runs out of money in year 19, while Carol's portfolio is still healthy at year 30. Same average return, same withdrawal amount, completely different outcomes because the sequence in which those returns arrived made all the difference. This is why the average return number that every financial product advertisement loves to show you is almost meaningless for a retiree. What matters is not what you average, but when you get each year's return. During the accumulation phase, when you are working and saving and not withdrawing, the sequence of returns doesn't matter much because you're not selling shares, you're buying them. A down market when you're still working is actually an opportunity. You're buying more shares at lower prices. And when the market recovers, those cheaper shares are now worth more. But the moment you retire and begin withdrawing, everything flips. Now, a down market means you are selling shares at lower prices just to pay your bills, permanently reducing the number of shares that can participate in the eventual recovery. The first 5 to 10 years of retirement are what researchers call the danger zone, the window during which bad sequence of returns does its most lasting damage. If you make it through the first decade of retirement with your portfolio reasonably intact, without being forced to sell large amounts of shares at depressed prices, your long-term financial security is dramatically improved. But if the market deals you a significant loss in years 1, 2, or 3 of retirement while you're pulling $40,000 or $50,000 per year out of a shrinking portfolio, the math can become unrecoverable. Now let me show you the actual numbers, because seeing this in real dollar terms makes it impossible to dismiss. Let's say you retire January 1st, 2026 with $1 million. You plan to withdraw 5% per year, $50,000, to cover your living expenses. Scenario 1. The market drops 20% in year 1. Your $1 million becomes $800,000 before withdrawals. You pull out $50,000. You end year 1 with $750,000. In year 2, the market drops another 10%. $750,000 becomes $675,000 before withdrawals. You pull out $50,000. You end year 2 with $625,000. In year 3, the market finally recovers strongly, up 25%. $625,000 becomes $781,000 before your withdrawal. You pull out $50,000. You end year 3 with $731,000. You've had a recovery, but you started at $1 million and you're now at $731,000 after 3 years, despite a strong recovery year. The early losses forced you to sell too many shares at the bottom. Now run the same scenario in reverse. Year 1 is up 25%, year 2 is up 10%, year 3 drops 20%. Year 1, $1 million grows to $1,250,000 before withdrawals. You pull out $50,000. You end year 1 with $1,200,000. Year 2, $1,200,000 grows to $1,320,000 before withdrawals. You pull out $50,000. You end year 2 with $1,270,000. Year 3, $1,270,000 drops 20% to $1,016,000 before withdrawals. You pull out $50,000. You end year 3 with $966,000. Same 3 years. Same returns, just in reverse order. But in the good sequence scenario, you end at $966,000 versus $731,000 in the bad sequence. A $235,000 difference from the same market returns in a different order. That $235,000 gap will compound over the following decades of retirement. The bad sequence retiree is on a trajectory toward running out of money, while the good sequence retiree remains financially secure. This is not a theoretical risk. This is what happened to people who retired in 2000, right before the dot-com crash, and to people who retired in 2007, right before the financial crisis. Retirees who entered those periods with heavy equity exposure and standard withdrawal rates found themselves in serious financial trouble that many never fully recovered from, even though the market eventually did recover. And here we are in 2026, with markets volatile, economic uncertainty elevated, and millions of baby boomers retiring every single year. The conditions that create sequence of returns risk are alive and active right now. So what do you actually do about it? Because understanding the risk is step 1, but protecting yourself requires a specific strategy. Protection strategy number 1, the cash buffer or bucket strategy. The core logic of the bucket strategy is simple. You never want to be forced to sell stocks when they are down just to pay your monthly bills. To avoid that, you keep 1 to 2 years of living expenses in pure cash or cash equivalents. A high-yield savings account, money market fund, or short-term treasury bills, completely separate from your investment portfolio. When the market is up, you replenish this cash bucket from your portfolio gains. When the market is down, you live off the cash bucket and leave your stock portfolio alone to recover. This simple strategy breaks the forced selling cycle that makes sequence of returns risk so destructive. You have enough cash to wait out a 1 to 2 year market downturn without touching your equity investments. Some financial planners recommend a 3-bucket system. Bucket 1 is cash for immediate expenses. Bucket 2 is bonds and stable assets for years 2 through 5. And Bucket 3 is equities for the long-term growth that protects against inflation. The buckets serve different time horizons. And the key discipline is that you only draw from the longer-term buckets when the shorter-term ones are being replenished from gains, never when the market is down. Protection strategy number 2, flexible withdrawal rates. The traditional 4% rule, withdraw 4% of your portfolio per year, was designed for a 30-year retirement with a diversified portfolio, and it works reasonably well in average conditions. But rigid adherence to a fixed withdrawal rate is one of the things that makes sequence of returns risk more dangerous, because you keep withdrawing the same amount even when the market is down. A flexible withdrawal strategy means reducing your withdrawals modestly in bad market years, perhaps pulling 3% instead of 4 or 5%, and allowing yourself to withdraw more in strong market years. Even a 10 or 15% reduction in withdrawals during a significant market downturn can meaningfully reduce the damage from sequence of returns risk, because you're selling fewer shares at depressed prices. This requires having some flexibility in your budget, identifying which expenses are non-negotiable fixed costs and which are discretionary and can be temporarily reduced during a market downturn. Retirees who can identify even $500 to $1,000 per month of flexible spending have a powerful buffer against sequence of returns risk because that flexibility means they don't have to fully liquidate shares during a down market. Protection strategy number 3, sequence-aware asset allocation. The standard advice of reducing equity exposure as you approach retirement is sound. But how you position your portfolio in the first few years of retirement matters enormously for sequence of returns risk. One approach that has gained significant research support is called a rising equity glide path, where you actually start retirement with a slightly lower equity allocation and gradually increase it over the first decade. This is counterintuitive. Most people are told to reduce stocks as they age, but the logic is that the danger zone is those first 5 to 10 years, and starting with slightly lower equity exposure reduces your vulnerability to a severe early loss. As you move past the danger zone with your portfolio intact, you gradually increase equity exposure to maintain the long-term growth you need to fund a potentially 30-year retirement. A specific example: entering retirement at 55% equities, 45% bonds and cash, and gradually shifting towards 60 or 65% equities by year 10 as your vulnerability to sequence risk has diminished. Protection strategy number 4, guaranteed income floors. One of the most powerful protections against sequence of returns risk is making sure your essential non-negotiable living expenses are covered by guaranteed income sources that don't depend on market performance. Social Security is the most obvious guaranteed income source, and this is one of the strongest arguments for delaying Social Security to age 70 if you can, because a larger guaranteed monthly benefit means you need to withdraw less from your portfolio in early retirement. If your Social Security benefit plus any pension income covers your essential expenses, housing, food, healthcare, utilities, then your portfolio only needs to fund discretionary spending. And a portfolio funding discretionary spending can be left alone during market downturns. You simply reduce discretionary spending temporarily, which completely eliminates the forced selling problem that makes sequence of returns risk so dangerous. For retirees who don't have enough guaranteed income to cover essentials, certain types of annuities, particularly income annuities, can create a guaranteed income floor by converting a portion of your portfolio into guaranteed monthly payments. I know annuities are controversial, and not all annuities are appropriate for all situations, but the income floor concept is sound, and for retirees with significant sequence of returns risk exposure, a well-structured income annuity can be a legitimate protective tool. Protection strategy number 5, Roth conversion and tax diversification as a sequence risk tool. We've talked extensively about Roth conversions in previous videos, but one angle we haven't emphasized enough is how having a Roth account specifically protects against sequence of returns risk. During a market downturn, you have the option to withdraw from your Roth account, which has no required minimum distributions, no tax consequences on withdrawal, and no mandatory timing, instead of selling depressed taxable assets. This gives you a third source of funds beyond your taxable portfolio and your cash bucket, a tax-free reserve that you can tap during a downturn to avoid selling stocks at the bottom. The sequence risk protection value of a Roth account is one more reason why Roth conversions in your 50s and early 60s, before you retire, are so valuable for people who are now facing a volatile market at the start of retirement. Protection strategy number 6, part-time income in early retirement. Even modest part-time income in the first few years of retirement can dramatically reduce sequence of returns risk, because every dollar of earned income is a dollar less you need to withdraw from a potentially depressed portfolio. This doesn't mean you need to work full-time. Even 10 to 15 hours per week of consulting, part-time work, or monetized hobby income, generating $1,000 to $2,000 per month, meaningfully reduces your portfolio withdrawal rate. A retiree who withdraws 3% instead of 5% from their portfolio in years 1 through 3 of a down market retains significantly more shares to participate in the recovery, and part-time income is one of the most practical ways to achieve that reduced withdrawal rate. Now let me specifically address what people retiring in 2026 should be doing right now given the current market environment. First, if you haven't already built a cash buffer, start building one now before you retire or immediately upon retirement. Target at least 12 months of essential living expenses in cash or short-term safe assets. 2 years is better, so that if the market continues its volatility, you have a runway to wait it out without touching your equity portfolio. Second, review your withdrawal rate and identify the true floor of your essential expenses versus your discretionary spending. Know exactly what you absolutely must have each month to cover housing, food, healthcare, and utilities, and separately identify what is lifestyle spending that could be temporarily reduced if the market forces a tough choice. Third, check your Social Security claiming strategy in light of sequence risk. If you were planning to claim Social Security early to supplement portfolio withdrawals, consider whether delaying, even by 1 or 2 years, might significantly reduce the pressure on your portfolio during the current volatile period. Every month you delay Social Security between 62 and 70 increases your guaranteed benefit, and a larger guaranteed benefit means fewer forced portfolio withdrawals during market downturns. Fourth, talk to a fee-only financial planner about your specific sequence of returns risk exposure. A good financial planner can run Monte Carlo simulations, probability models that test your retirement plan against thousands of different market scenarios, and tell you specifically how vulnerable your current plan is to sequence of returns risk. If your plan fails in a high percentage of bad sequence scenarios, that's critical information you need to know now, not 3 years into retirement when the damage has already been done. Fifth, do not panic. Sell your equity positions in response to current market volatility. I know this sounds counterintuitive after spending this entire video explaining how dangerous down markets are for new retirees, but panic selling locks in losses permanently and eliminates any recovery potential. The danger of sequence of returns risk is being forced to sell at the bottom, not choosing to sell at the bottom. Forced selling happens when you have no cash buffer and no flexibility. Choosing to sell in a panic is a different mistake that compounds the damage. The strategies I've outlined, cash buffers, flexible withdrawals, guaranteed income floors, Roth reserves, are designed to eliminate the forced selling situation so that you never need to panic sell. If those protections are in place, market volatility is uncomfortable but survivable. Your portfolio can wait for the recovery while your cash and guaranteed income cover your expenses. Let me also address RMDs, required minimum distributions, because for retirees who are already past age 73 and taking RMDs, sequence of returns risk operates a little differently. Unlike voluntary withdrawals where you can choose to reduce the amount during a down market, RMDs are mandatory. You must take the calculated distribution regardless of what the market is doing. This means RMD-age retirees face an amplified version of sequence of returns risk. They cannot reduce their withdrawals to protect their portfolio during a downturn the way a younger retiree can. The protections for RMD-age retirees are the same: cash buffers, Roth accounts, guaranteed income. But the urgency of having those protections in place before a downturn is even greater, because voluntary withdrawal flexibility is limited. This is also why Roth conversions before age 73 are so powerful. Every dollar converted to Roth before RMDs begin is a dollar that won't generate a mandatory taxable withdrawal during a future down market. Let me give you the honest bottom line. Retiring in 2026 in a volatile market is not ideal, but it is also not catastrophic if you understand the risk and have the right protections in place. Millions of people have retired successfully during volatile markets, 2002, 2009, 2020, by having cash reserves, maintaining flexibility, and not being forced to sell equities at the worst possible time. The retirees who get hurt by sequence of returns risk are the ones who didn't know it existed, had no cash buffer, took maximum withdrawals regardless of market conditions, and sold equities in a panic, not the ones who understood the risk and planned for it. You now understand this risk better than most people who are retiring alongside you in 2026, and that knowledge, combined with the strategies we covered today, gives you a genuine advantage. Let me recap quickly. Sequence of returns risk means bad market returns early in retirement do permanent damage even if the market eventually recovers, because you are selling shares at depressed prices to fund withdrawals. Protect yourself with a cash buffer of 1 to 2 years, flexible withdrawal rates, a guaranteed income floor from Social Security or annuities, Roth reserves, and modest part-time income if possible in the early retirement years. I'm Bob. This is Retired Not Broke. Drop a comment below and tell me, are you retiring in 2026? And has this video changed how you're thinking about your withdrawal strategy? I read every single comment, and I'll see you in the next one.